Welcome to America's Policy Podcast. I'm your host, Cassandra Alessio, and this is episode 30. I was reading an article in the Wall Street Journal, and it was entitled How and Why U.S. Capitalism is Unlike Any Other. And this was on September 29th. And there was a sentence that I want to quote because I think it's so important when we're discussing about the best and worst policy this week. And it states, equality wasn't guaranteed, but opportunity was. Again, it was equality wasn't guaranteed, but opportunity was. And I think that is such a good quote because the main part of policy development is to make sure that everyone has an opportunity. It does not guarantee that we are going to have the same results, but we should all have the opportunity to achieve something or to be able to access something. And there is a bill in Congress. I'm going to look it up. It's HR 3475, and it's Bipartisan American Homeownership Opportunity Act of 2025. And this was introduced on May 17th of this year. And let's see. This is on the congress.gov website. And the first paragraph, I'm just going to read it real quickly. This bill provides a new refundable tax credit for first-time homebuyers and a new tax credit to home builders for the construction of starter homes, both subject to limitations. And they're going into the details of all the limitations, and some of them I agree, some of them I don't, but the fact is that it's finally being discussed how access to home ownership is becoming harder and harder. And there is no opportunity that is given to every person to have the option to buy a home. Now, I think that this is a good policy and a good discussion. Whether it goes anywhere, I don't know. A lot of bills are introduced and they just die because there's not enough press, there's not enough publicity, there's not enough constituents pressing the issue. But I think this one is important because it's showing the discrepancy of home ownership and those that cannot afford home ownership. And it's becoming harder and harder for first-time home buyers. There are so many people that are in their late 30s, early 40s that still are saving for their first house or just gave up on purchasing a home. And there's a time and place for renting. There's a time and place for different types of purchasing in regards to condos, townhouses, and then there's luxury apartments. And I think what it's important is that we need to have a discussion about giving access and opportunity for people to be able to purchase a house. Now, when I say house, I mean a house with a backyard, front yard, no HOA. And the reason why I distinguish that is because there is a lot of overdevelopment, in my opinion, for condos and townhouses. And then there's also luxury apartments that are for rent. But I think that there are times in people's lives, or sometimes there's benefits to renting, and then there's benefits of owning a townhouse or a condo. There could be benefits. But I think the majority of people, or a lot of people, if not majority, would prefer a single house, backyard, front yard, not all these rules they have to follow, high HOA fees. And this is getting the discussion started. Building or builders tend to, I guess, gear towards higher income households. And that's not always the case. There's our builders that do first time homes, but the problem is the profit margins are very different for those types of houses compared to those that are millions and millions of dollars. So it incentivizes builders to build these first time homes, which I think is a good idea. And it also gives opportunity for first time home buyers. So if they're saving up for their down payment and they need to save some money on their taxes for whatever reason, maybe because after they took all this time to save for the down payment, come to after the fact that they buy their house, they realize, oh, I have to buy a car, or I need renovations for the house, and that the paying less taxes could benefit them and kind of help them transition into home ownership. Home ownership is very different than renting, and home ownership is very different in regards to budgets. People's budgets are a lot more tighter than they were. So I think that it's important to give opportunity. And this is the prime example. Now, again, with every bill, we don't know the motive, right? We hope that it's a good motive and we hope that it really is giving opportunity. But without constituents reaching out to their members and their representatives, this bill is not going to be able to push through. Now, again, there's pros and cons of every legislation, but it's a good discussion to say, hey, there's a problem, or there's been a problem. This should have been done years ago. But again, usually this just happens on a federal level. It's usually after the fact that the problem actually happened, then Congress steps in. So it's usually never prior. Most of the time when situations like this, it's after the fact. So we have a huge problem, years go by, and it's like, okay, let's fix the problem. So I think it's important. I think it's a good policy discussion, whether it passes, whether it changes, whether it even makes it through. I think it's important that it's something that it should be recognized as a good policy and a good policy discussion. And the bad policy of this week, I'm going to have to not necessarily have a specific bill, but I would say it's the overdevelopment of apartment buildings, the overdevelopment of townhouses, condos, etc. Again, time and place. There are some places that need it, but I also think that too much overdevelopment not only causes problems for the town, but it raises taxes. It causes a strain on the school system, causes a strain on the police, the fire, etc. And also it pushes people into these buildings that might not necessarily want them, but have no other choice. So anytime a town overdevelops, in my opinion, I think it's going to run into a lot more problems. If these land lots were mandated, that's why we have zoning, mandated to offer more single family houses, even if a developer wants to come in or a builder wants to come in and build 10 small first time houses rather than 15 condos, I still think it's better. It gives access to land, it gives access for people to have control over their finances, control over what they want to do with their property. So I think anytime we hear any type of overdevelopment when it comes to this, especially when it comes to housing, I believe that constituents should really stand up for their town and really stand up for their state, because that's going to lead to a lot of problems down the road. That's it for today. Thank you, and I'll see you next week.